Greetings, I'm Doug Rickert from Bud Rickert's Art Center. We are at 1277 Northeast Street in San Bernardino, and I'm here to show you some instruction helpful aids on presentation of artwork in several different formats. Typically what happens when you're asked to make a presentation in a professional format situation is you have to have your work ready to be hung or juried or shown in some fashion. In order to do this, you have to have your items ready for hanging or display purposes. First of all, I'd like to use an item that I have here. This is a photograph. I thought it would be the easiest way to get started. It's a picture of one of San Bernardino's most famous artists, Carl Schmidt. I thought it would be good simply because it has neutral tones. And what I've got here is a piece of mat board. It's white on one side, tinted on the other. And a mat is an item that goes around the picture to enhance itself. Then a frame is typically put over the edge of that. So what I'm holding right now is the subject picture. This is the mat format, and then there is a frame. On smaller pieces from 8 by 10 through 11 by 14 formats, matting typically runs in the 1.5 to 2.5 inch wide formats. What that means is that the matting edges typically will be between 1 and 1/2 inches to 2.5 inches on each side. When you get into items 16 by 20 through 24 by 30, your matting proportion would go up into the 4 and 4.5 inch, with the variation being selected by the artist. We have an 8.5/11 print, and matting typically will run over about 1/8 of an inch. In some cases you have imagery all the way to the edge, so your mat would be much thinner over what we call the overlay, and I think 1/8 of an inch will probably be good on this. There's no specific edges here that seem to be in play as far as restricting anything that's real pertinent. Got an open sky on top, open midground and background over on the side, a little bit of easel here, then too much over on the side, so it could stand a little bit and it could be moved around. So we'll have mat being 11 by 14, 11 by 8.5, and if we have a 1.5 inch mat, we're going to come out to 14 on the height and about 11.5 on the sides. I've prepared the outside opening of this mat. It's 11 by 14. I'm going to show now how you cut a mat. Typically what you do is you lay your subject onto the outside mat that will be the same size as the frame, and you would then measure it from the back. Everything on the mat will be done on the back side. This is the front. This is the back. Taking the subject, I've decided that about 1 5/8 is better than 1.5. I'm using a little framer's T-square. It's not mandatory. This is just a speed tool. You can do this with a simple ruler by measuring straight across all of the corners because you're trying to create 4 intersections. So I'm going to do this real quick for you, and I hope you can see this. I'm making a line where I'm going to be intersecting the corners. Now what we have is we have 4 intersected corners, and they will be smaller than the picture, hopefully at least 1/8 of an inch on every side, or less depending upon how you want to make your presentation. Okay, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go and I'm going to cut this mat, and I'll come back, and when we start again I'll show you what I came up with. Now I have cut these intersections, and we have the intersection which is called a dropout, will now remove itself from the mat. So now what we have is a mat, and you are trying to cut through the intersection of the lefts and rights approximately 1/8 of an inch or less. That will give you the end quality, which is the 45-degree diagonal. You like to try to achieve a corner that does not override itself. I've overridden this slightly so you could see it. Perfectly cut mats go right to the corner at 45 degrees, and that's what you're trying to achieve. Understand that mats don't have to be cut on mat machines. I am showing you a mat cut on a mat machine. However, it's not mandatory that you do that. If you do want to cut your mat with an X-Acto knife or a razor blade knife, the only prerequisite you have to cut it with is a straight edge. Just for purposes of demonstration, I will say to you that if you're going to affix your artwork with masking tape, that you at least put it diagonally and a very small amount of it on a smaller picture on the corner at a 45-degree angle on each corner of the top, about like that. That would be about as much as I would put on your original Born artwork. Now, what happens with a lot of artwork is it's very wrinkled. You're not mounting it, or you haven't mounted it. So what you want to try to create is a little bit of a stretch if you can. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this on here. And I'm affixing this tape to the mat. And I am putting a great deal of pressure at the very corner of the artwork itself, not so much on the picture, a great deal on the mat. I'm running my thumb over it. And what this does is this creates a pretty good adhesion at the very corner of your artwork and the mat, not so much on the artwork itself. There is a product out here in the marketplace. It's called Archival Grade Adhesive Tape. It's called Framers Tape. And what's nice about this is that it is transparent and it is heat reversible. It doesn't have any rubber cement solvents to it. It's considered a fairly acceptable affixing device for your artwork to the mat. This should be available at any art store. I carry it. Lots of places carry it. It's a really helpful upgrade from the masking tape. Okay, so now what you have is your original artwork. You have a piece of mat, and you have your substrate or backing board. All right, the next ingredient will be the glass. Okay, now the thing with glass, and I haven't mentioned so far that there are many different grades of glass. There's also a whole range of plastic products called plexiglass. And in some situations, you're going to find that mechanically glass is not well suited to your presentation. You might want to consider using plexiglass rather than glass. Okay, now I have the four sides flat. The next thing I do is I flip it over and I look for a mistake. Now here's the thing that most people don't consider. I have messed around on this thing 3 or 4 times, and my alignment on the mat may have been skewed slightly. When people walk up to your artwork in the gallery and they look at it and your mat is 1/8 of an inch out of square, you look bad. You look bad. So you want to be sure it's nice and straight. Good presentation. Presentation. Okay, on the backing paper there are several grades of paper. Typically throughout the industry, craft brown paper, which is sulfated acid-reduced wood, is a fairly accepted dust cover. Okay, so now you have the paper back on here. Dust cover. This also gives you a chance to affix your certificate of authenticity, your personal artist statement, whatever you wish the public to know about after they've purchased your artwork. Then 100 years later, when they need provenance on your original artwork that's never been opened, it's in virgin condition, it's all on the back here. And that's a really important thing because that will make your artwork worth more. Okay, so now we have the paper back, we have the face, looking pretty good. All right, the next thing we do is we look at it and we be sure that it is facing the right direction. And the right direction is the top is towards you. Okay, you lay it down like this. And now we're going to affix our hanging devices. We are now at the point where we're going to put the hanging devices on the back of this picture. We have the dust cover on here, completed, nice and tight. We're ready to affix the screw eyes and wire in this case. Normally what happens is you have a wire that is the appropriate thickness with the proper amount of braidation, and each of these will make up a large strand of wire. Comes in several different thicknesses. It's a combination of zinc and tin wire, meshed together to make a strong, effective, non-rusting type wire. As I have said in the past, your hanging formula is approximately 1/3 of the distance of the long edge where it will be hanging. In the case of this picture, we're at 15.5. So if we come down approximately 4 to 5 inches from the top, we would be in the approximate third value, or 1/3 of the total length. So I'll make a mark at 5 inches, coming in the middle of the back area where there is the most amount of wood, making a mark of 5 inches on that side, 5 on this side. Taking the awl or ice pick again and finding the middle of the area with the most amount of material. Since this is descending slightly, you'd like to go a little bit on the inside of center. And put the awl in there, rotate and push at the same time to create a divot hole. Same thing on this side. And these are screw eyes. Screw eyes are available in a whole lot of different lengths and diameters. This is the appropriate size for this weight and size picture. And you start them typically by pushing them into the hole, twisting, and then finishing off the plunge of depth with this ice pick, going all the way down so the shank is coming in contact with the edge of the wood. A little bit of angle rather than straight is beneficial, because when you strain the wire, it wants to go across, and if you have the hangers any angle but that, which is at about 30 degrees, maybe 60 degrees, the stress is evenly dispersed across here, so you do not have a lot of deflection of the side of the frame. This is really apparent in larger sizes. When you come down 1/3 and you span a large distance, you can distort the frame to a point when it's hanging on the wall, it looks like it's bowed in. And that you do not want to do. It makes a very bad presentation. Structurally, it's inferior. So we take the wire, I pre-cut it. You want to insert it from the outside in. Typically, I tighten them up like this, just create a tight effect. I roll the wire through one loop. I tighten it up, and I start curling the wire around the single strand, a minimum of 6 times. More if you think that you need it. 6 is usually plenty. Then what I do on the other side, if I'm not dealing with a predetermined size of height, I will usually give a little allowance, a little slack. This looks like it's about 2 inches off the back surface, and that will equate to a width of about same thing on the upside. This would be a good, easy, not too stressful tie off of the back. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. 6, 7 turns. You've got some excess left over. Pull it up like this. Take your side dikes. Trim off the excess. You now have your picture ready to hang. Okay, on a small picture like this, it's not mandatory for multiple hanging devices. I'm going to show you on this next little piece some different kind of hanging situations. When you get past about 20 inches, you might want to consider hanging in 2 points. The 2 points disperse the amount of stress on the back of the frame and the extra weight that you have with your glazing and all the other componentry that's inside. So after about 20 inches of width this way, you would want to consider 2 hanging devices on the wall. The wire may want to be a little thicker. This is all proportional to weight, and weight has to do with size and the glazing and the type of frame and the heaviness of the frame. This should help you quite a bit.